G'day guys, how are you going today? I'm back from a small hiatus. I went to Minsk in Belarus to visit the wargaming development team there, spoke to the developers, met a few other community contributors, and I learned quite a lot about the game, had an amazing insight, and there will be a video on that very soon. But today I do want to talk about an issue that has been on my mind a lot playing World of Tanks, especially quite recently. When recently I mean the last few patches, and that is, why is artillery still broken and how can we fix it? Because guys, it is a simple fix in my opinion, and in the opinion of many of you, I suspect as well. So guys, today we are having a look at Dobler Hunter in his Object 261. This is the tier 10 Russian artillery. It's a very accurate artillery. It always has been, even before the nerfs. Or the accuracy, or when the nerfs were in place and this thing hit really hard, but all artillery hit really hard. But anyway, I'm on a bit of a tangent there. I haven't chosen this replay to attack him or anything like that. In fact, I have just chosen this replay because it is a prime example of how these artillery tanks, no matter what the tier, are still quite broken. Now, as you can see, there are two tier 10 artillery on his team. On his team is obviously him, but also a Batchat 155-58. Of course, that is the autoloader with 4 rounds, I believe, in its clip. I don't play artillery very much, and this is a point I want to stress as well. I don't believe that artillery should be taken out of the game. I understand why they were introduced, and that was to stop people from camping. Of course, it didn't have quite the desired effect because it made people camp even more. But just have a look at the aim time of this tank, of the gun. It is absolutely insane, and the real issue comes down to when you have more than one of these tanks, one of these artillery, I should say, on your team or on the enemy team, and one hits you, and you get stunned, and then you repair that with your you probably have to repair your track or something, because they often get blown up with the high explosive rounds that these artillery will always carry. But they'll also, your tank will also get stunned up to 40 seconds. Now, if you have one artillery on the enemy team, that's fine. You can repair your tank, you can repair your you can repair your crew by hitting the first aid button. But as soon as another tank, as soon as you get hit by one of these tanks, artillery, you're very likely going to get hit by another artillery on the enemy team. So all of a sudden, you can be trapped for up to 40 seconds, guys. And it can happen if you get hit directly, for example, by a Conqueror gun carriage. You can get stunned for up to 40 seconds. And although, yes, you can repair it, if you get hit by another Conqueror gun carriage, then for instance, if you get hit by 2 artillery tanks, then you're going to get hit repetitively before you can even repair your tank to sufficiency. And really what that creates is quite a toxic kind of gameplay, because you can't escape. These tanks, of course, or artillery, have had their splash radius buffed as well. And that's really nasty as well, because it means that you don't even have to be in the direct line of fire or get hit accurately by one of these tanks. All that really has to happen is that you have to be slashed by it. And if that means you're on like 100 health or so, I mean, personally, from personal experience, if I'm in a tank and I have less than 100 health and I know that there's a artillery on the enemy team, I pretty much know that I'm going to get hit regardless. And very possibly die. I mean, you could see there that although he missed, he was able to, and he missed by quite a lot as well, guys, he still was able to A, stun him, and B, he was able to hit 2 critical hits on him, probably the tracks, but honestly, who knows. And then there's the second issue. Did you see how the Batchat 155-58 on his team also then hit that I think it was a Russian medium tank, the T-62. So really, that T-62 is pretty much stuffed because he's out in the open. Not even so out of the open, he's out in the open for artillery, and even though he might not be able to be seen by Dobier's teammates, he's able to be seen by artillery, and he really doesn't stand much of a chance, especially against that Batchat 155-58. That artillery is just going to pummel him with shot after shot after shot if he wants to. He's got a 4 shell clip, and that's my real main issue. that stun mechanic A is really, really annoying, and I don't think that it's beneficial to gameplay. Like, sure, it's beneficial to artillery players, and I can kind of understand that, but it's not really beneficial for people who play tanks, which is the majority of people on the team. So rather than removing this game mechanic, because I do agree that the game mechanics now are better than they were pre the artillery rebalance, because pre-artillery rebalance you could get hit and lose all your health in a single shot, and that was obviously very, very annoying. But it doesn't really make it any better, this stun mechanic at the moment, especially when you have more than one artillery on the team. And that's the point here, guys. If we limit the amount of artillery tanks on the on either team, then it really does limit the chance that it can ruin the game, because as it currently stands, you can get hit by artillery after artillery shell, and as soon as you get hit by one artillery shell, you repair your crew, you repair your tracks, and then you're hit by another artillery shell, then you're pretty much, you know, your game's almost over. You're going to get hit by high explosive, you're going to have crew module damage, you're going to have, crew damage and module damage, and it just makes for really non-fun, very rage-worthy kind of gameplay, which I don't think is necessary at all. And it really can be fixed by limiting the artillery on the team to one per team. I mean, it literally is that simple. It will fix many of the issues. And another issue as well, guys, is not just that you can get repetitively hit by the artillery. I mean, obviously that is a massive issue, but there's another issue as well, and that is that players can still almost platoon with each other. Now, technically, after the rebalancing of all the artillery tanks, it became impossible to join a platoon with a fellow artillery player. And that's very, very good, because it means that you can't do things like easily, you know, collude with other players and just keep pummeling enemy after enemy. Obviously, no one would want 3 Conqueror gun carriages working together in a platoon, because they would just demolish the map. And that was really the reason, having spoken to developers, that they limited the artillery, because they don't want people to really make use of these stun mechanics and just completely ruin the lives of people playing in tanks. Having said that, that doesn't really stop people from being able to do this. My example is that people can very, very easily, if they're on TeamSpeak, if they're on Skype or whatever, just decide to join or go 3, 2, 1 and click random battle at the exact same time, because it often works. This is something that I have done, not in artillery, because I don't really play artillery, but in tanks. You know, if I want to verse my teammate or a friend or something in a game of random battles, then I can do that. And it happens a lot, especially on the Asia server where I play, because sometimes, especially when I play, there's only like 200 people in the random battles queue. So it's not difficult for me and my friend to end up in the same game. In fact, it actually is quite likely. And more often than not, we're on the same team and we're like, damn it, we can't verse each other in the game. But what that means is if you're in an artillery and your friend is in an artillery, and there can be up to, I believe, 3 artillery on either team, then really that can mean that you guys can still collude with each other, and although you won't get the benefits of a platoon, you still can work together to win the game. And that's a really big issue as well, that I think really does call for just 1 artillery per team. So yeah, guys, the main issues, in my opinion, is that, and I think in an opinion of a lot of you as well, is that in order to make artillery, you know, more fair, because they are pretty unfair as it currently stands in a lot of games, and more so, they're just so frustrating to play against. They don't make the game any better, and I don't think they make the game any better for really most players, because most players do not play artillery. And I'm not saying to nerf artillery, not at all. I'm just saying take away the ability for more than 1 artillery to be on any team, and that way you stop people from A, colluding with each other and being able to still pretty much platoon, even if they, you know, aren't technically in a platoon, and B, making sure that someone doesn't get unfairly just hit and lose the ability to be able to fight against the enemy team, because they just keep getting hit by tanks, by artillery on the enemy team, which just have the ability to do so as it currently stands. And yeah, that's the real main issue. I mean, people say, oh well, look, as a, artillery were nerfed a lot. Yes, they got their rate of fire buffed and their area of radius of shell explosion buffed, but their penetration was severely nerfed. They don't have AP shells and APCR shells and heat shells anymore. So it's not like anything with high amounts of penetration. It's just high explosive. And while yes, I do agree that artillery were nerfed to a certain extent, I also believe that they were made a lot more playable. And there's one instance in this game where I'm going to show you that really you can say all you want about how nerfed artillery became, but there are very many circumstances when I've been one shot by artillery. And I think what you're about to see is an absolutely perfect example of how artillery really haven't been that nerfed. As you can see, it's the high explosive, although yes, it isn't, it isn't AP, you still can really do an insane amount of damage to these tanks because you're firing a very, very high caliber gun. I mean, in this Object 261, which I think has the smallest gun out of all artillery in World of Tanks at tier 10, it has a 180mm high explosive shell. You hit anything with 180mm, you have a very, very high likelihood of really damaging all their modules, etc. And have a look at this. Now, I know the Gorilla is not a very heavily armored tank at all. Of course, it's not. But you see, it just set him on fire again. And this is something that, I mean, artillery won't struggle with. They have a very high caliber gun. It has a higher likelihood of doing module damage. So, although yes, AP rounds and those kind of rounds were removed, it really doesn't mean that these tanks are any worse than they were. In fact, I believe they are stronger. And I believe that they're also better to play against because it means you're not going to get one shot as often. That was really many people's complaints. But I think now it's become an issue that although yes, you're not going to get one shot as often, especially if you're in anything with a solid amount of armor, you still can very, very easily get destroyed by many different shells. And the issue that's now arisen, of course, as I've argued, is that, well, now people can just, completely destroy you and really make the gameplay a lot less enjoyable solely because they can now fire shells at you, they can stun you with the stun mechanic, and it really does take away from the game, and I think many of you will agree with me as well. So enough rambling, enough ranting. I think I've made my point. Let's just appreciate how Dobia has done in this game, because he has played well. I mean, a lot of you will argue that he's just pointing and clicking to an extent. That's true, but there are some other tactics as well. I personally can't play artillery very well, probably because I choose not to play it very often at all, but I think you can still appreciate that some people, that this makes the game for some people. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm not going to get into the politics here. Let's just have a look at how he's doing. So far he's done 5,571 damage, which for any artillery game is still quite high. Of course, with the nerfs, it means that damage often isn't as high, but you get more experience through things like spotting damage and stun damage. So he's done quite well this game. He hasn't destroyed any tanks yet, but he's going to try and go for it, of course. And unfortunately, this kind of gameplay is a little bit more boring because he's not moving around. He's just moving his mouse around, I suppose. But that doesn't mean we can't appreciate what he's done. So he's done an extra 21 damage. He's got his first kill of the game, and now that is the end of the game. So let's have a look at the post-game stats and see just how well he did. So guys, this was a Mastery Badge Ace Tanker game with a Bruiser medal. He got a Gauze medal for driving an SPG and causing damage exceeding 10 times the hit points of his vehicle. He also got a Faden's medal for destroying the last enemy tank in the battle with the last shell he had, a Confederate medal, and also a high caliber medal. In total, he did 6,710 damage, but only really scored 1,100 basic experience. And this is something else I want to talk about as well. So in total, he fired all of his shells. Even so, he still made a profit of 70,784 because he didn't fire any premium rounds. And he also got 4,290 stunning damage, I guess you could call it, with a base experience again of 1,100. Now, this base experience is something I want to talk about. If you're playing artillery, having played it myself in the past, I've noticed that it is quite hard or more difficult to grind up as well. So I think that there are also experience kind of buffs, I guess, that these tanks could get on the side of artillery players here, but that's up for wargaming. Again, I don't play, so I don't really know myself, but having played them a while ago in the past, that is something that I did notice, that the grind to go up tiers was quite slow and quite tedious. So to recap, guys, I just want to say that I'm not bashing artillery players here because I believe that they're in the game, they're not going to be removed, so there's no point in complaining about them, but there are ways to make it more bearable for most other players in World of Tanks who do not play SPGs or the artillery. Because really, as it currently stands, they make the game a lot less enjoyable, and if we just limit them, just easy as limit them to one per team, that can make everyone's lives a whole lot easier, because it means that people cannot collude with each other, they cannot queue up in random battles and get into the same team with each other and do what people could do in platoons. And it also means that it makes the game more bearable for us who don't have to keep sitting there, and once we use our first aid kit and our repair kit, just keep getting hit and stunned by enemy artillery, which really does ruin the gameplay for I think everyone. You know, it's too easy for artillery, and what kind of needs does, I mean, like, what kind of pleasure does that give you to play with like that little skill versus, you know, having to actually hit the enemy team, move around as you should in an artillery. But anyway, guys, thank you very, very much for watching. I will have a new video about my trip to Belarus, Minsk, like a vlog series coming out really, really soon, so do stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe if you are new. Leave a comment down below and tell me what you think about artillery. Try not to be too mean about it, and I'll catch you next time.